Have you ever felt like the stronger you become, the more society pushes back? Like the more you stand out, the more people try to bring you down? What if I told you this reaction is exactly what Nietzsche warned about? And it's no accident. In this video, we'll dive deep into Nietzsche's rage against the mediocrity of society and uncover why strong individuals are often hated, feared, and misunderstood. You'll discover how your strength, independence, and authenticity can make you a target for manipulation and control. But here's the twist. We're going to explore how using unpredictability can keep manipulators out of your life and put you in control of your own destiny. This video isn't just philosophy. It's a blueprint to help you break free from the limitations society tries to impose on you. If you've ever felt trapped by society's expectations or found yourself stuck in toxic dynamics, this video will change the way you see the world and your place in it. Stick around, because you're about to learn how to become untouchable. Most people live in quiet obedience, not because they're weak, but because they've been trained to confuse comfort with safety. Nietzsche looked at the masses and saw a strange disease, the fear of standing out. A world where people hide brilliance just to not disturb anyone. He believed mediocrity isn't just tolerated, it's rewarded. And if you've ever felt punished for being too intense or too ambitious, you know exactly what he meant. Look around. The loudest applause is often for those who never rocked the boat. The worker who plays it safe. The student who doesn't question. The friend who avoids uncomfortable truths. Society loves predictability. It's addicted to sameness. And when someone dares to break the pattern, they're called arrogant, or difficult, or crazy. Ever wonder why being too different is treated like a crime? Strong individuals don't fit that mold. They move with sharp edges. Their minds challenge assumptions. Their actions create tension. And that tension exposes something uncomfortable. How much of society is built on dull repetition? Nietzsche wasn't romanticizing rebels, he was warning us. When brilliance walks into a room, the mediocre don't get inspired. They get defensive. You've seen it before. Maybe you shared a bold idea at work and were met with silence. Or took a risk others wouldn't, and they secretly hoped you'd fail. This isn't coincidence. It's the subconscious survival instinct of the herd. When someone rises too far above, it makes the rest feel small. So instead of asking, how can I grow? They ask, how can I pull them down? So what do the masses do? They praise humility, but not real humility, the kind that shrinks itself, that hides its light to avoid triggering others. Nietzsche saw this as a strategy of the weak, a collective hypnosis where people celebrate mediocrity and demonize distinction. Not because they don't see the difference, but because they do, and it terrifies them. And here's the kicker. Most people don't even realize they've been trained this way. It's not taught in school. It's absorbed through silence, through rejection, through the unspoken rules of fitting in. The masses don't just avoid strength, they rewrite the rules to punish it. But that punishment reveals something even darker about how society reacts when real power shows up in the room. Power isn't loud. It doesn't scream for attention. The most dangerous strength is the quiet kind, the kind that thinks for itself, walks away without explaining, and doesn't beg to be liked. That's the kind Nietzsche admired. The kind that terrifies society, because real strength isn't controllable. It breaks the mold, burns the script, and dares to live unsupervised. Ever noticed how the moment someone starts acting with true independence, the world suddenly grows uncomfortable? The jokes get sharper. The silence gets heavier. It's not a coincidence. It's resistance. Society doesn't just dislike strength, it's wired to fear it. Because when someone refuses to play along, everyone else has to question why they're still pretending. Nietzsche understood that strength isn't about dominance, it's about self-possession. The ability to stand alone without flinching. The strength to not need validation, applause, or permission. That kind of power unravels the fabric of collective security. Because if one person can live without the tribe, maybe the tribe was never necessary in the first place. Take a look around. Who gets mocked the most? The eccentric, the visionary, the unapologetically different. They're labeled arrogant, difficult, too intense. But dig deeper, and you'll find fear wrapped in every insult. Fear that someone might actually escape the invisible prison everyone else is still pretending they don't see. That kind of escape? It's contagious. Society has a strange allergy to unfiltered potential. That's why it tries to sedate strength with shame. It teaches you to tone it down, soften the edges, play nice. But why? Why must intelligence feel like arrogance? Why must independence feel like rebellion? Maybe, just maybe, because strength reminds the weak of what they gave up on becoming. But here's the twist. If strength is feared, it's because it matters. Weakness doesn't shake foundations. But strength rewrites the script. And that's where things start to break, when the powerful stop apologizing and the powerless start waking up. Which brings us to a deeper fracture, one Nietzsche knew all too well. There are two moralities at war within every society, and within you. Slave morality worships safety, humility, and sameness. It whispers, don't stand out. Be kind. Play fair. But Nietzsche saw through this. He believed it was born not from virtue, but from weakness. From resentment. From the minds of those who couldn't rise, so they rewrote the rules to make falling look noble. Master morality, by contrast, doesn't ask for approval. It doesn't need external permission to exist. It creates values instead of inheriting them. It honors strength, ambition, creativity, even cruelty when necessary. It is the morality of becoming, not belonging. But here's the unsettling truth. In a world ruled by slave morality, those with master morality are labeled dangerous. Have you ever felt guilty just for wanting more? For aiming higher than others around you? That guilt isn't yours. It's injected by a system designed to keep you tame. Slave morality teaches that ambition is arrogance, confidence is pride, and self-reliance is selfishness. But ask yourself, who benefits when you dull your edge? Certainly not you. Slave morality turns morality into a cage. It parades victimhood as virtue. It doesn't want you to win, it wants you to settle. To stay where it's safe, where no one rises too high, because that would shame the ones who never tried. That's why strong individuals often face quiet sabotage. Not because they've done wrong, but because they've refused to kneel. Nietzsche didn't call for cruelty, he called for honesty. And the most honest thing you can do is ask, am I living by values I chose or values I was trained to accept? If your morality was handed to you like a leash, are you really moral? Or just obedient? Slave morality thrives when people stop questioning. That's why it teaches you that questioning is dangerous. But what if morality isn't about being good? What if it's about being alive? Truly alive. Unapologetically yourself. That's the fire of master morality. Not domination over others, but mastery over your own destiny. So now the question is no longer, am I good? The real question is, am I free? And that is far more terrifying. Strength doesn't just attract attention, it attracts blame. In Nietzsche's eyes, society needs villains. And if one cannot be found, it invents one. Who better to target than the strong? The bold? The non-conforming? These individuals, by merely existing, remind others of their own submission, and nothing provokes hostility faster than an unspoken truth made visible. It starts subtly. A strong voice is called arrogant. A unique mind is deemed dangerous. People begin whispering, who does he think he is? But beneath that question lies something deeper, a refusal to confront personal cowardice. Rather than rise, people point. Rather than evolve, they condemn. The strong become mirrors that reflect society's insecurity. Psychologically, it's a defense mechanism. Projection. Displacement. The group, feeling small, transfers its guilt onto the individual who dares to be large. That person becomes the problem, not the mediocrity, not the fear, not the stagnation. It's easier to crucify one than confront the collective failure. Just ask history. How many visionaries were destroyed by the very people they tried to awaken? Think about it. When was the last time you saw someone exceptional praised without some backlash? A leader dismissed as too intense. A creator ridiculed as out of touch. Society rarely rewards difference. It tolerates it until it gets uncomfortable. And when it does, the crowd turns. Not because the strong did something wrong, but because they made others feel too much. Nietzsche understood this brutal cycle. He saw that scapegoating wasn't just a social pattern, it was a survival tactic. The crowd stays united by isolating the one who threatens the illusion of equality. And here's the most chilling part. Many strong individuals learn to dim their light just to avoid becoming a target. They betray their essence to avoid being burned at the stake. But what if the real betrayal is silence? What if you're not here to blend in, but to disturb? If society turns on its strongest, then the price of truth is exile. Are you willing to pay it? Or will you shrink, apologize, conform, just to stay in the herd? Remember, the scapegoat isn't weak. He's just the only one who dared to walk forward. Authenticity is dangerous. Not because it's violent or chaotic, but because it cannot be controlled. Nietzsche saw the true self as a rebellion against the masks society demands. When someone dares to be fully themselves, unfiltered, raw, unapologetic, they disturb the quiet illusion that everyone else is trying to maintain. And society? It retaliates with subtle cruelty. Exclusion, ridicule, and isolation are its weapons. Why? Because authenticity exposes the artificial. A person who lives without pretending reveals just how much everyone else is pretending. The smile you fake at work, the opinions you suppress to fit in, the dreams you've silenced to stay safe. When someone walks into the room without wearing a mask, they remind you that you're still wearing yours. That sting isn't hatred, it's shame disguised as judgment. Psychologically, we're wired to mirror others, to belong. But when someone breaks the mirror, it forces us to see ourselves, clearly and without distortion. Nietzsche believed society doesn't want to see. It wants sedation. It prefers dullness over disruption, masks over mirrors. So it shames the authentic, not because they are wrong, but because they are free. And that freedom terrifies the herd. This punishment comes dressed in politeness. You're too intense. You're overthinking. Why can't you just be normal? These phrases are not feedback, they are warnings. Warnings that your individuality is too visible. Warnings that you're stepping outside the psychological cage. But here's the question, would you rather be safe or real? How long can you suffocate before the mask begins to rot your soul? Nietzsche didn't write for the herd, he wrote for the one who knows they've been acting. For the one who feels the ache of pretending. He warned that living inauthentically is not only a betrayal of the self, but a slow spiritual suicide. Yet most people would rather kill their truth than face rejection. That's how deep the fear runs. That's how seductive the lie of acceptance has become. But maybe you're tired of shrinking. Maybe your soul is restless because it was never meant to be edited. So what if society punishes authenticity? What if the greater punishment is self-betrayal? The question is no longer, will they accept me? But rather, will I accept myself, fully, fiercely, without apology? And if you did, who might you finally become? There's a reason why people silently root for the successful to fail. Envy isn't loud, it whispers, spreads, corrodes. Nietzsche saw it clearly. The hatred directed at strong individuals is rarely about what they do, but about what they represent. Their freedom exposes our chains. Their strength reminds us of our compromises. And deep down, most people would rather see excellence fall than confront their own mediocrity. Envy doesn't admire greatness, it resents it. The successful become mirrors, reflecting back all the roads not taken, all the effort not made. It's easier to label someone arrogant than to ask, why am I not there too? That question burns. So society protects itself by tearing down those who shine too brightly. Mock them, misinterpret them, cancel them, all under the disguise of justice or humility. Nietzsche understood this wasn't just emotional, it was structural. The herd doesn't just envy the strong, it builds moral systems to punish them. We call ambition selfish. We paint confidence as narcissism. We redefine strength as aggression. It's not about fairness, it's about making excellence feel wrong. If everyone's average, then no one has to feel less. That's the quiet, envious logic of the masses. But envy isn't always obvious. Sometimes it hides in fake compliments, forced smiles, subtle sabotage. Ever notice how people react when you improve yourself? When you raise your standards, they get nervous. Suddenly you're changing too much. But ask yourself, are they really concerned for you, or for what your growth says about them? Your success reopens their old wounds. And they want the bleeding to stop. This is why the strong walk alone. Not because they want to, but because they must. The higher you climb, the thinner the air, and the lonelier the path. Envy waits at every level, disguised as friendship, love, even family. Nietzsche warned that being strong means enduring this quiet war without surrendering to bitterness. You can't expect applause for rising above a system built to keep you down. So what now? Do you dim your light to make others comfortable? Or do you risk their envy to become who you truly are? The world won't always celebrate your strength, but that doesn't mean you were wrong to rise. Nietzsche's challenge is this: can you be strong enough to not just face envy, but to rise despite it? Because once you stop fearing envy, you become unstoppable. Leadership is not the glory you think it is. It's not the applause, the spotlight, or the admiration. According to Nietzsche, true leadership is a kind of exile. It's walking ahead of the crowd, not beside it. And that distance comes with a price: loneliness, misunderstanding, and constant resistance. Society doesn't follow visionaries willingly. It resents them first. Then maybe decades later, it builds statues. Have you ever felt like your thoughts were too sharp for the room? Like your ambition made others shrink, even if you said nothing? That's the early sign of the burden Nietzsche describes. Leaders don't just face external pressure, they battle the inner weight of knowing they see more than others are ready to accept. And vision without acceptance breeds isolation. It's the curse of clarity in a fog-blinded world. But don't mistake that solitude for failure. In fact, it's a marker of evolution. Nietzsche believed that the Übermensch, the higher man, must detach from the herd, not out of arrogance but necessity. You can't innovate if you're still begging for approval. You can't speak the truth if you're terrified of silence. Real leadership often looks like rebellion, until time catches up and calls it wisdom. Still, the burden isn't just emotional, it's existential. When you lead, you carry the weight of potential futures. Every choice echoes louder, every misstep is magnified. No one sees the sleepless nights, the self-doubt, the cost of holding the line when everyone else folds. People say they want strong leaders, but only if they don't have to feel that strength too closely. Because strength exposes weakness, and no one likes the mirror. So what do you do with that isolation? Collapse under it? Hide your intensity? Or embrace it as the sign you're becoming something rare? Nietzsche didn't romanticize loneliness, he weaponized it. He saw it as a forge, a place where the true self burns off the expectations of the masses and emerges untamed. If you're alone on your path, maybe you're not lost. Maybe you're just leading before anyone else dares to follow. Here's the question that should haunt you. Are you willing to carry the burden of your own brilliance? Not the filtered, polished version that gets applause, but the raw, misunderstood fire that scares people. Because leadership isn't about being liked. It's about being necessary. And sometimes to lead, you must first accept the pain of walking alone. Would you still do it? What if society wasn't broken by accident, but by design? Nietzsche believed that our systems aren't neutral. They're engineered to favor obedience over brilliance. Governments promise order, religions preach submission, and corporations reward compliance. But under these polished exteriors lies a deeper agenda, suppressing the rise of truly powerful individuals. Not criminals, not rebels without cause, but the independent thinkers, the ones who refuse to kneel. Ever noticed how the more self-reliant you become, the more friction you face? Schools don't teach self-mastery, they train conformity. Workplaces don't cultivate genius, they reward docility. Even families, in subtle ways, often prefer the obedient child over the bold one. And when someone does break out of this mold, they're called arrogant, difficult, a threat. Nietzsche saw this clearly. The system doesn't fail to recognize strength, it targets it. Why? Because strength is unpredictable. A strong mind questions authority. A strong will resist control. A strong voice cannot be silenced without consequences. These traits are dangerous to any institution built on masses staying docile and dependent. So what does the system do? It shames strength as selfish. It pathologizes intensity. It preaches that true virtue is soft, quiet, equal. But is it really virtue, or control in disguise? Nietzsche argued that institutions survive not by promoting truth, but by filtering it. Only what's convenient is allowed to thrive. That's why original thinkers are buried in bureaucracy, innovators drowned in red tape, and visionaries muted by protocol. The strong are sabotaged not because they're wrong, but because they reveal the weakness of the machine. And machines hate mirrors. They want parts, not reflections. What if your inner tension, your frustration with the world, isn't a flaw, but a sign you're awake in a dream designed to sedate you? The world rewards surface-level ambition, but punishes deep transformation. So ask yourself, have you been tricked into self-sabotage? Are you playing small to keep the peace? Nietzsche would argue that peace without freedom is just slavery dressed in velvet. If you want to live freely, you must unlearn the obedience you were taught to worship. You must recognize that strength will always provoke resistance from a corrupted system. And then, despite the fear, despite the pressure, you must choose it anyway. Because while society builds its safety on your silence, your greatness begins the moment you break it. Are you ready to become a threat to the system that fears your strength? There's a reason mediocrity feels so familiar. It's not a bug in the system, it is the system. Nietzsche believed society isn't just tolerant of weakness, it's addicted to it. Weakness is safe, predictable. It doesn't question. It doesn't threaten the collective ego. It keeps everyone in line. And in a world that worships safety, true strength becomes the enemy, something to be mocked, softened, or isolated. Modern life is built like a cage with velvet walls. Everything is designed to soothe you. Algorithms that echo your beliefs, jobs that numb your ambition, people who reward your compliance. But beneath all this comfort, have you ever felt hollow? As if something powerful inside you was dying quietly? That's not depression. That's your potential suffocating under society's addiction to weakness. And you've been told to call it normal. Strength, in contrast, is chaotic. It disrupts routines. It demands responsibility. It asks you to suffer for your own vision. Most people don't want that. They want the illusion of effort without the weight of transformation. That's why real strength is often dismissed as toxic, narcissistic, or extreme. Because it exposes the lie that we can grow while staying comfortable. Deep down, the masses fear what they secretly crave: power. Nietzsche didn't just point at the crowd, he pointed at you. Or have you chosen comfort over courage? How often do you dilute your truth so others don't feel insecure? Society's addiction to weakness only thrives when individuals agree to remain small. And the most tragic part? Most people don't even realize they're complicit. They call their sedation peace, their compromise kindness, and their stagnation stability. Ask yourself, who would you become if you stopped apologizing for your intensity? What if your inner conflict isn't a flaw, but a sign you were never meant to fit into this soft, self-soothing world? Nietzsche knew, strength is painful because it's real. And reality, true, raw, unapologetic reality, is unbearable to those still clinging to illusions. So the strong are exiled, not because they're wrong, but because they are too alive. The real revolution isn't political, it's psychological. It begins the moment you stop anesthetizing your power to make others comfortable. Society may never admit its addiction to weakness, but you don't have to play along. You can choose the harder path. The path of clarity, of discomfort, of becoming. Just remember, the stronger you grow, the louder the world will scream. But that's not your signal to stop. It's your proof that you're finally breaking through. What if everything society told you about success was a lie? What if the true path to freedom, power, and fulfillment lies in rejecting the safe, comforting narratives that have been drilled into your mind since childhood? Nietzsche believed that to truly evolve as individuals, we must embrace strength, our own unique power, and break free from the mental chains that bind us to mediocrity. The only way forward is to stop fearing who we could be. Think about it, society thrives on conformity. It's an ecosystem that rewards the predictable, the comfortable, the easy. But in doing so, it stifles the very qualities that make us extraordinary. Strength, whether intellectual, emotional, or physical, is disruptive. It demands change. It challenges norms. And it makes those around us uneasy. Nietzsche's radical idea wasn't just about gaining power. It was about becoming who you were always meant to be, regardless of the discomfort it might cause. How many times have you compromised your true self to fit in, to avoid conflict, to remain liked? These compromises eat away at the core of who you are, and over time, you lose touch with your real strength. Nietzsche's philosophy calls for a brutal honesty with oneself, recognizing and embracing your potential, no matter how inconvenient it may be to those around you. The strong individual doesn't ask for permission. They rise despite society's condemnation. They decide what's right, not the crowd. Yet here's the paradox. The stronger you become, the more alienated you'll feel. You'll be misunderstood. You'll be hated. The masses will want you to shrink back into the fold, to conform to their mediocrity. And it will be tempting to give in, to ease the discomfort of standing alone. But Nietzsche's message is clear. This isolation is not punishment. It is necessary. True strength is born in solitude, in the moments where you challenge your own limitations and face your fears head-on. And so the question remains, do you have the courage to embrace your strength? To live outside the confines of the comfortable and the predictable? The world wants you to believe that you are weak, that your power should be suppressed for the sake of harmony. But that's the lie. Your strength, the one that lies dormant, ready to awaken, is your ticket to real freedom. Not the security of the herd, but the independence of the individual. The future belongs to those who dare to be strong. It belongs to those who defy the pressures of society and choose their own path. So stop apologizing. Stop shrinking. Step into your power. Because only when you do, can you finally experience what it means to be truly free. Before we dive into the conclusion, I want to hear from you. How does Nietzsche's philosophy resonate with you? Do you feel like society is holding you back from embracing your true strength? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join a community that values real growth, authenticity, and strength. Now let's get back to it. As we wrap up, remember that the path to becoming who you were meant to be is not an easy one. It's filled with resistance, both from within and from the world around you. But that's the price of true freedom. It's not for the faint of heart, but for those who dare to rise above the noise of mediocrity and embrace their power. So, will you accept the challenge? Will you stop playing by the rules society set for you and start living by your own? The strong individual is the one who steps into the unknown with confidence, who embraces solitude, and who refuses to be held back. If that sounds like you, then it's time to take that first step. Once again, don't forget to comment and subscribe. Your journey toward greatness starts now, and I'm here to walk with you every step of the way.